Hello everyone, welcome to Dan Does Stuff. Today on this episode I'm going to show you how to make maple syrup. It's that perfect time of the year right now, right after St. Patrick's Day, where we have temperatures that in the daytime are above freezing and at night are below freezing, because that's essential for trees producing sap, which you need to create maple syrup. Now I'm going to break this out into a 7-step process and show you each step of the process and how I do it. Now you can go totally in a different direction. You can go really small, or you can go really big if you want to spend the money and have the equipment. Step number 1, identify trees. Do you have any sugar maples on your property? The best way to do that is in the fall. Go out and look at your leaves that you have on those trees. This right here is a sugar maple leaf. I just pulled it off the ground outside just now. But you want to do this in the fall. A maple leaf has 5 points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like a Canadian flag, eh, man? That was totally Jamaican. Sorry about that. So identify that you have the sugar maple trees. Next step would be to buy your supplies. You can go to your local hardware store if your area is big on doing that. They'll carry mapling supplies. Otherwise, you can go online. There's a bunch of different places you can order it. Now, what I would recommend if you're new to it and you don't want to dump a bunch of money into it, buy a couple taps, maybe 3-4 taps, depending on how many trees you want to tap, and sap collection materials as well. I'll show you in a little bit that I use the bag collection methods. There's buckets, there's tons of stuff. Also check Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist to see if anybody is selling anything. A lot of times you can get some of that stuff for a really, really good price just to get you into the mapling hobby. Okay, so you got what you're going to need right off the bat is you're going to identify your trees. Next, you're going to want to get your supplies. So you're going to need taps to tap into the trees. You're going to need a drill bit for the size of the tap. So depending on the size of the tap you get is going to be dependent on what size drill bit you need. Next, you're going to want collection method. You want bags, buckets. I'll show you that in a little bit. So that'll be what you collect your sap in. Next, you're going to need a bucket to collect all the sap that you're getting from the trees before you start boiling it down. And what you can do is you can buy, I have food safe 5-gallon buckets that I use. In the past, I used garbage cans, like the huge plastic ones that were what I thought were food safe, but I don't think they were now that I think of it. That's why I went away from them. You can also use anything that's really food safe that you can collect a bunch of sap in, because you need a lot of sap in order to make a little syrup. The ratio is 40-to-1. So if you have 40 gallons of sap, it'll make you 1 gallon of syrup. All right, so you got your sap collection. You got your buckets to collect the sap in once you're getting it from the trees. And then next you're going to need an evaporator or a boiler, a boiling pan. Like I said, depending on how big you want to go and how much money you want to spend, I've used like a turkey pot a couple of years ago, where I'm just kept on adding the sap to the turkey pot and boiling it outside over a fire. If you want to get a big evaporator, they make those too. It makes it easier. The more surface area you have, the quicker that you can boil the sap down into a syrup. Now, if you have a small pot, well, it's going to take a really, really long time to do that. But you can do it. And if you do stay small and you only have a couple trees, I mean, you'll get a lot of sap from those trees, depending on your timing. But it's not like it's a ton that you need. All right, so you got that. Other way to do it, okay, so you got to boil it down. Are you going to do it outside? Are you going to do it inside? I do not recommend doing it inside. It creates a ton of moisture. So if you have a propane stove outside, you can do it over that. What I do is I do it over a big wood fire. I will show you that when I get to that step. So sit back. I hope you enjoy this and you learn something new of how to make maple syrup. We'll move on to the next step, which is tapping trees. I'll show you how I do that. Okay, now we're on to the tapping stage, step number 3. Identified my tree. This is a maple tree right here. It's a sugar maple. And this time of the year right now, when you want to be tapping your trees, is when your daytime temperature is above 40 degrees and your nighttime is below 0, so freezing. Like I said earlier, right around a little bit after St. Patrick's Day up here in Minnesota, that's when it works best for me. You know, right here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna drill our hole. I've already drilled this one, but I just wanna show you for demonstration purposes. A lot of times you'll hear 2 feet off the ground and then 2.5 inches in, but I just boosted this one up a little bit so you could see it and I'm not squatting. Have my drill bit, get your tree, go at a little angle up and go in 2 to 2.5 inches. Pull it out. And then here's my spile. I tap. It's the best part, just love tapping. Tappity tap, tap, tap. Rubber mallet. Tap it in to get a good seal, because if you don't have a good seal in there, what happens is your sap will seep underneath your tap and not go down into your bag to collect it. So make sure you have a nice tight seal on there, and that goes back to your size of your taps and the size of your drill bit. Okay, so you got your tap on there. Next step. Here's those collection bags that I was talking about. What you have here is you have the inside just a little metal ring, and then you put the bag in and then wrap it over the top, slip it on, and then this slips right in the inside, and then pull it down. There's little lips in there, and then there's a hole, it clips right in there, and you have a little edge for it to hang. So there you go, you tapped one tree. Now, depending on the tree, if the sap is running really hard, you could fill this bag up in a day, like pretty high. I have, I think, 10 trees tapped right now, and half are producing. 2 to 3 are really producing a lot, so I've been out here every day collecting the sap and putting it in my buckets, which I don't let sit. I have it sitting in a snowbank. I let them sit for no more than 7 days, and then I will boil it down. Cool, so that's tapping trees. Next up, we'll go to number 4, collection. All right, people, it's afternoon. What do? Time to go check on some sap sacks. So we're gonna go touch some sacks and feel how heavy they are. If there's any sap in them, we'll collect it and grab our bucket. So let's go do that right now. Walking through the woods. Well, I don't even know why I wanna sing when I walk. It's kind of bizarre, but I like to do it. Okay. Whoa. All right, here's one. A little bit of sap in there, as you can see. It's frozen. It's a lot colder today than it's been. It's kind of a warm week the other week, but this week it's been a little chilly. Here we go. Ooh, heavy bevy. That one's good. All right, checking some more, checking some more. Ooh, look at that. God's carpet, moss. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool. All right, check out this baby. Ooh, that's a good one. Let's see if we can get if it's dripping at all. Yeah, a little bit. Get a shot of it in there. All right, so I'm gonna go do is get my bucket, my white bucket, fill these things up, and then this is where you want to put them in a snowbank or just keep them cold. Put them on the south side of a building or anything like that, outside, because you want to keep it cold and you want your sap to be nice and clear. If it is cloudy, that means there's like a bacterial growth. So if you have warmer temperatures during the day and it doesn't even get below freezing, or when you have your sap sitting out too long, it'll get a cloudy look to it, and that affects your end product of your syrup. So make sure it's nice and clear, clear as water. So we're gonna go get the bucket and collect it. Okay, we're on to our 5th step, which is evaporating the sap and boiling it down to a thick consistency. Now, we're not gonna come out of this right here with syrup. This is our evaporator, but what the goal is here to just get it down to a thicker consistency. So this is our setup. Actually, this was built by my 2 aunts. They did an amazing job. And it's just cinder blocks with blocks on the bottom and a chimney stovepipe coming out the back, and then we got this custom made pan, and you can use anything. Like I said, I use pots. I've actually used the same setup and just put some cross braces on and just used a big like turkey pot and boiled it down. The only problem is, since you don't have as much surface area, well, it's going to take a lot longer and you burn through a lot of wood. And talk about wood, you need a lot of wood to do this right here. So what you got here is you get your fire going first, and then you put your evaporator pan on and start adding your sap to it and keep boiling it down. As you can see, all the smoke, pretty cool, spookiness going on. Freaking hot. So this is evaporating away, and if you smell it, it smells really sweet. It's really cool. And you just got to stay at this. I suggest always starting first thing in the morning. Once you have all your sap collected and stored in buckets, start this first thing in the morning, get your fire roaring, nice and hot, and just monitor this and keep feeding this fire until you get it down to a thicker, it's going to be like a brown consistency. And then you can move it over to the finishing phase, which we'll go through later. But yeah, this thing is awesome and it's extremely efficient. Since we're not leaking any heat out the sides, we're keeping all the heat in there just like a stove. I'm not covering the front up, and it's actually nice because we have an easter wind coming in, and it's just blowing it right through and coming out the chimney up there. Another thing which I love about this is you just grab the wood and chuck it in. And as you're doing this, what you're going to want to do is use a skimmer. You're going to have a bunch of foam kind of gets up on the top of the sap that's boiling down, and just go through. I'll show you. So you get the foam and just get it out of there. And it'll just help speed up the process in getting this simmered down to a thicker consistency. All in all, sit back and relax and enjoy. Keep adding your sap to this as you're boiling it down. And depending on how much sap you have to boil down will be dependent on how long it takes. So far, I've gone through about 10 gallons of sap right now. I started this morning, and we're moving along pretty good. Next phase after this, once we get it down to the consistency that we want, we're going to drain it, and then we're going to finish it, which was where we get it to a certain temperature to where it gets really thick, and that's when we have maple syrup. Okay, I wanted to show you where we're at right now. I keep adding sap to the evaporator, and I'll kind of show you it's getting lower, so I'm going to keep adding. I'll show you what that looks like. Here's my bucket of sap. I know it looks bad, right? These plastic buckets, and you're like, no, I'm not mixing up meth, neighbors, squirrels, nut barriers. Don't worry. You just pour it in slow. You don't want to go fast, just slow. Nice and easy. All right, now we're not boiling anymore. Well, you can see, come here, come here, come up. Okay, get a shot of that right there. So you can kind of see what it looks like. It's a little bit of a darker tint, but it'll really darken up the more we do. Now here's that skimmer, and what I do when I'm evaporating, once it starts boiling, I just skim off the bubbles, toss that white stuff. And also if there's any ash or anything else that gets in there, this gets it out. Or feathers, dirt, anything like that. All right. See you back when we start finishing. All right, everybody, we're on step 6, finishing. Now what I did is we took the big evaporator right here and we put it up on the picnic table. And what's wonderful about having these one-way valves, these ball valves, is you easily can get whatever your product into a bucket or a smaller container really, really easily. If you didn't have this valve right here, you'd have to tip it, and it just is a mess and it's a lot harder. Chances are you're gonna get burned. So this is awesome. So what we did is we transferred it. Once we kind of boiled it down to a thicker consistency, like half of what we had, then we put it up on here and we moved it into a smaller pot. Now, we don't have a lot. I think I did roughly 5, 10, 15, like 20 gallons of syrup or of sap. So it'll roughly make around a half a gallon, maybe a little bit less of maple syrup. So right now I have it over here on this smaller pot, and we're gonna boil this, get this kind of going. And I have a thermometer that I'm gonna check every so often. We wanna get it up to 219 degrees, okay? 219 degrees, that's what you wanna get it at. As soon as it hits that temperature mark, you wanna pull it off the heat, and then that's when you wanna move on to the next step, which is bottling, and then we'll go through that. So you gotta really pay attention to this step in the stage, because if it goes past 219 and even higher, that's where you're gonna end up with a cream, or even turn it directly from syrup to sugar, just like that, which isn't bad either. That's cool, you can use on rubs and whatnot. So we'll get back here, and when I get to the bottling stage, and show you how it works. Cool. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're on to that finishing stage. I got it up to 219 degrees. And one trick that I like to do, I don't have a ton of syrup in here right now, but what I like to watch is you'll see the little bubbles bubbling up when it's boiling. And when it gets to close to 219, the bubbles will go from being big, not that big, it's exaggeration, but they start getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it'll start boiling up. And that's usually right about the good time to take it off. So now next part, we want to filter our finished product. And this is just my rig up that I have right now. If I had a bunch more, I would hang this up and I'd have a bigger pot to filter it into. But for how much we have, like I said, we only had 20 gallons roughly, and maybe a little bit less than half a gallon. So it worked out pretty dang close at 40-1. So this is what I'm gonna do. I have this valve. I'm just gonna bring it in close. Uh-oh. I have a little bit more in there, but I'm going to let that drain out. So the reason why you want to filter it is you want to get all the impurities out of here. I mean, there might be some ash and whatnot. So we'll filter this down. Oh yeah, good stuff right here, right here. So once you get it all filtered, that's when you bottle it. And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to hot bottle it. If you keep it really hot and then you bottle it when it's at 200 degrees, then that sterilizes your bottles, and you can just store it just in a dark place in your cabinet, pantry, whatever. But with this, it's getting cold, so what I'll do is I'll bottle it, and then I just keep it in my fridge. Or if you give it to someone, just tell them to keep it in the fridge, and then it'll last a really long time. Cool. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back in the studio after a day of making maple syrup. As you can see here, look at that golden deliciousness. Pretty amazing. How much I was able to make, it was 4 of these bottles, this size, and then 1 more a little bit smaller than this, so 5 bottles total out of the roughly 20 gallons of sap that I pulled out of the trees. And what I did today is I actually pulled all of my equipment out because I'm only doing it this 1 week. If you were to leave all your stuff up, you could continue collecting sap for another 7 days, and then the following weekend do the exact same thing. Now what I did is I started around 8:30 a.m., started basically boiling my sap down, and the whole process took till about 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the afternoon. And I will tell you, the syrup is amazing. It's super good, fresh, delicious, COVID-19 free, baby. Oh yeah, super good. But I will say I do still have to clean all of the equipment. I got a bunch of it already cleaned up, but that is one downfall. Making maple syrup is great for family, friends. You can get everybody involved doing it. It's great just sitting around and having that fellowship with people, because it does take a long time to do. So that is one aspect that's wonderful about it. The other aspect that isn't so good is cleaning everything. There's so much material that you need to clean, unless you have a huge wash tub to make it easier, or a hose or something like that, where you can just kind of go nuts with it. It takes less time, but I'll be in the basement, my basement, for a little while, washing everything out, hanging everything up to dry, and then enjoy some of this maple syrup tomorrow on some pancakes or a pannekuchen or something like that. Super good. Well, I hope you learned something today watching my video. And if you want to see anything else, please send me a comment or send me a message. Make sure to like, share, and we'll see you next time.